Wednesday's welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we're with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can find us easily. Just bookmark lcpioneers.com/live, and we're archived on YouTube at youtube.com/lcpios, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, different members from our alumni base, as well as different members of Lewis and Clark College community as well, 4 days a week. Appreciate being with us on this Wednesday. I am Ryan Goff. I'm the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We are the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and a member of the Northwest Conference, competing with 19 intercollegiate athletic teams against other institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. And as a member of NCAA Division III, a chance for our student athletes to compete with over 430 institutions all over the country. It's really a fun and unique opportunity for our student athletes to have a chance to compete on a national level. And then with Lewis and Clark's robust overseas study program, a chance for our student athletes and students alike to experience overseas study as well. It's something we keep talking to our guests about, throughout the course of the show. Now entering about 30 weeks on Facebook Live. You can find all our past shows, as I mentioned, at youtube.com/lcpios. In a few minutes, we'll welcome in our guest today, a sophomore for Lewis and Clark women's rowing. We'll talk to Jaelen Hodges. We'll ask her about her choice to come to Lewis and Clark from Eugene, Oregon. So about an hour and a half, 2 hours down the road, south on I-5. See, had she had much experience with Portland, or was that something that was new to her? But Lewis and Clark's campus, just 6 miles from downtown Portland, Oregon, a chance to get a perspective of why she chose to stay in state. And then also, she's a coxswain for the rowing team. And sometimes my favorite questions to ask are those most basic questions, just to get a feel for exactly what she does to help the team. We'll talk about that in just a few moments from now. We do invite you to get in touch with the show. You can share your thoughts in our comments below, or you can always email us to, you can find our email, sports@lclark.edu, an opportunity for us to continue to have different guests on the show and invite you to suggest guests that you want to have on the show in the near future. A couple other ways you can get a hold of us on Twitter and Instagram. LC Pioneers is a place that you can find us on both of those platforms as well. And we've continued to talk about our Hall of Fame class of 2020. And just this morning, I started to finalize our plan to have them as guests of the show, the 4 individuals that are being inducted as individual inductees for the class of 2020. The 1993-94 men's basketball team also inducted, with 2 others coming in for lifetime achievement or meritorious service. But the week of October 13th, or shows for the 13th through the 16th, we're planning to have each day one of our individual inductees on the show as our guest, plus looking forward to an in-person Hall of Fame induction sometime in the spring, once we can get hopefully the pandemic in a place where that is something we can do. I would invite you to check that out on lcpioneers.com. That is our website where you can read about the Hall of Fame class. We continue to post our past interviews on our website as well. You can read about the new assistant coaches who are helping teams for the 2020-21 academic year. All of that available at lcpioneers.com. And last but not least, invite you to check out our YouTube playlist of our past shows, lcpioneers.com live. Yesterday, a conversation with Carl Dickman, an alumnus from the class of 2010 for men's cross country, men's track and field. That was a fun conversation. Had a chance to talk to him. That's posted now at youtube.com/lcpios. So let's take a break. We'll come back and talk to our guest. Jaelen Hodges joins us from women's rowing when we come back on lcpioneers.com live.
I'm Ann Bentley. I'm an associate professor of chemistry, and in this research group, I supervise the 2 students working in the Rogers program this summer in our lab. The brown bag experience is a good chance for students to get experience presenting their work that they've done in the lab, especially to an audience that's not technical.
What's intriguing about the brown bag experience is it incorporates all of the Rogers program. So I'm able to hear people in the psychology department and what research they're doing, but it also gives us the opportunity to share our research with the greater science community at Lewis and Clark. And for incoming students, the summer program is really beneficial for getting opportunity in research. So I've had the opportunity for research in the past, but other students may not have the same opportunities. So it's nice to work in a professional lab setting and potentially have the opportunity to publish a paper, which looks really good moving on into doing professional research out in the field.
The students grow a lot during the summer in their ability to learn the techniques and apply the techniques and suggest their own ideas for what could come next and interpret their data. It's just a big, usually if they haven't done research before, they learn a lot in that short period of time.
Welcome back to lcpioneers.com Live, presented by PioStream. It is Wednesday, and we are excited to bring in our guest to the show. Jaelen Hodges joins us, a sophomore for women's rowing on this Wednesday. Jaelen, appreciate taking the time to join us and get a chance to talk about your experience so far, as I mentioned, a sophomore in your underclassmen years. And this is kind of the question that I am opening most of our shows with right now, because the pandemic has now reached into the 6+ month range. How are you doing? How is fall 2020 semester going for you so far?
It's definitely been interesting. I have one class that's in person. I'm on campus, and so but I only have like Monday lecture in person, and the rest is in Zoom. So I have like 1 hour a week where I see people in person. So it's definitely been interesting. I'm getting through though.
Yeah, I think right now, that's what we're doing, is trying to make adjustments on the fly. And it's something that we've had to do since the spring. You're a primarily spring sports student athlete, although there is a key component to rowing that happens in the fall. Specifically to last spring, especially being a freshman last year, what was some of the surprise? What were some of the reactions for your team when you learned that there wasn't going to be a season?
Yeah, it was really difficult because when everything started shutting down, it was 3 days before our first regatta. So that whole week we were all really excited. We had our first 2K test on the rowing machine that Monday. So everyone was still completely in competition mode. And then Tuesday we were like, maybe we won't have practice today. College is talking about some things. And then that Wednesday, we just all gathered up and we're like, yeah, we're not going to have practice again for the whole rest of the season. Everything's canceled. We're all going to go home. So it was definitely like very fast and very unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, adjustments on the fly and trying to make the best of the situation and adjusting to academics too, with the remote classes last year. I brought this up in the open because I'm always curious. My wife is born and raised in Oregon, but she was in Southern Oregon, grew up in Medford. And so when I asked her, how many times she visited Portland growing up, she'd always say, oh, I've probably been there maybe 6 times, which as a Montanan was unfathomable for me because we drove all over the state and everything was so far away. So I'm curious, you grew up in Eugene. How familiar were you with Portland? Was it a every month occurrence, or was it something you visited pretty infrequently?
It was probably more on the infrequent side. Like people come to Portland, like from Eugene, you go to Portland for like concerts. That's mainly like, yeah, people come to Portland for concerts. I'd go to the zoo maybe once a year. But it was not a super frequent thing. I'd seen all the sites. I'd gone to Voodoo Donuts, which we also have in Eugene. I'd been to the zoo, OMSI, all that kind of thing, but it wasn't a super frequent occurrence.
And so then for you, when you look at the reasons why you chose to attend Lewis and Clark, what were some of the top 2 bullet points?
Yeah, being close to home. It's definitely nice that, I can have my car and drive down I-5 and, be home in less than 2 hours if I really need to be. And because when I toured the campus, it was just beautiful. I mean, the flowers all in bloom in the spring are just breathtaking, and that view of Hood you get over the reflecting pool, it's just awesome.
Yeah, we're showing some shots of campus and Tryon Creek and down to the baseball and softball fields. Jaelen Hodges joining us on lcpioneers.com Live, sophomore for women's rowing. And being from Oregon, I've kind of picked my reasons about why I think this is one of the best states on the planet, one of the best parts of the world, really. Curious, how do you describe Oregon to people who have maybe never visited, or if they show up and say, hey, what should I do? What are some of your top things?
I think the great thing about Oregon is there's something for everybody. Like if you're a beach person, you can go to Florence or Newport and find good beach areas and beach hikes and sand dunes, and if you're, you know, a river person, you have the Willamette and the Deschutes. You can go rafting. You know, if you want to be hot, Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon in the summer, like definitely hot things to do. Go lay out in the sun. If you want forests, if you want the gorge up in Northern Oregon, look at waterfall hikes and things like that. I just think that Oregon has something for everybody.
So let's focus now on rowing. You're a member of this team, as I've mentioned. How do you get started with the sport? Specifically for you, how did you get started with the sport of rowing?
My parents told me I had to choose a sport to do in high school, and I had done track and cross country for a really long time, and I was just not into it anymore. I didn't enjoy running. I wanted to stop running, and I had a bunch of friends on the crew team. We had a small crew team at my high school, and I'm short. I'm 5'2". So they were like, hey, there's this position on the crew team where you don't actually exercise. You just sit in the boat and you yell at us and you steer. And I was like, sign me up right now.
And so I'm curious then what was the introduction, that transition to actually competing and being in that coxswain position? What were some of the early challenges or the things that you really had to kind of adapt to early on?
Well, the first challenge was when I joined, there was only 4 novice women, and the smallest boat you can have when everyone has one oar is a 4. So we needed to have 4 people row, or we wouldn't be able to like compete, because a 3-person boat doesn't work. So I had to row at first, which was a good learning experience. It made me a better coxswain because I could understand what was happening from the rower's perspective. But it was certainly challenging because it was a lot more work than I anticipated, and rowing is hard. It uses a lot of your body. It really hurts. And also I was really bad at coxing people who were older than me at first. I felt kind of embarrassed, and I felt like they knew more about rowing than I did. So it felt weird for me to try to be like telling them things and ordering them around. So kind of gaining confidence was a struggle at first.
Well, and that was going to be my next question is confidence kind of had to build. When did you kind of get over that hump? When did you realize that, like, wow, this is something that I am capable of doing, something I'm good at?
Probably my senior year of high school. I got into a lineup where I was in the same boat consistently for a couple of weeks, and I really got to know everyone in that boat. And I could start to feel that things were off in the boat without having to see someone who was obviously like not timed right. Like I could just feel like the boat is leaning to one side or the other, so I could remember, oh, this person's on starboard and they usually have their oars too low. So I could just feel that happening and say like, you know, Ben, lift your oar, the boat's tipping to starboard. And that was probably the first time where I was like, whoa, that was really cool. That was a really good call. I'm pretty great at this.
Jaelen Hodges joining us on lcpioneers.com live. We're 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can find us easily. Type in lcpioneers.com/live and watch all of our past interviews as well on YouTube at youtube.com/lcpios. You alluded to it right there, kind of in that moment when you realized that this is something you were capable and going to be good at. What is the role of the coxswain? Because like you talk about, if you're going to your first regatta as a spectator and you see everybody look in one direction but there's the other person, kind of describe exactly that role and what you supply the team.
Well, the first role of the coxswain, which people don't often think about, I didn't think about when I joined, is that they steer the boat. There's a rudder in the boat, and there's strings attached to the coxswain seat, and so you can push the boat in a certain direction, and it's your job to keep the boat straight while the rowers are rowing. And you can be great at motivating people. You can be like the world's best motivational speaker and still be a terrible coxswain, because if you don't keep the boat straight, you're gonna add hundreds of meters to the race, and your crew is gonna be slower. So steering is really important. But yeah, we're kind of like the reminder. At a regatta, you would see a coxswain going around and making sure all the equipment is checked, making sure all the bolts are tight. Everybody has their oars where they need to be. because no one wants to show up to race, walk your boat all the way down to the dock, and then realize, oh, no one brought oars down. So they kind of keep everybody in line, make sure all their rowers are starting their warm up at the right time so that they can get on the water, because you can't just get off of the dock and start the race. You have to row to the start, and sometimes for different races, the start line might be super far away. So you kind of have to make sure the timing is right so you show up to the race on time and you have enough time to warm up on the water. And another big role of the coxswain is while you're on the water, they make it, they think so that the rowers don't have to. That's how someone described it to me once. So the rower's job is to row, and so you're doing everything you can so they don't have to think about anything. So you tell them, into do this, so into stop rowing, into switch to rowing harder, into strokes, or you tell them like where you are in the race, everything, so that their main job is just rowing, and you kind of tell them the lay of the land.
I'm intrigued. I mean, like that's one of the best times for me to kind of stop and understand that specific role, and I hope for those who do go out to a regatta for the first time have that understanding. I'm probably going to clip that out and share that, so I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
We talked about the spring season, cut short, and now fall. There's no fall competition right now. So I don't know if you have a best moment necessarily, but as I say that, I realize a lot of times the best stories or the best moments of being on a team come outside of competition. For you, when I ask you what that best story so far has been as a member of the rowing team, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it's been really good. Like, just being part of, I love being part of our team, and especially since things have been like on Zoom lately. Like, we've been having Zoom meetings, like Zoom team meetings, and like all of us coxswains have been doing like little meetings where we stay together. So like over the summer when we were on Zoom, we watched some like coxswain videos together. Not for practice, just because they're funny, because on YouTube you can find recordings of people, and sometimes they're really good and helpful, and you can be like, wow, I want to use that when I'm coxswain. But we were doing it in terms of these are really bad and funny coxswain videos. So that's probably like the most fun out of practice, just zooming with the other coxswains and watching really terrible coxswain videos and just laughing a lot.
Now you have a neat coaching staff, and they share the hallway with me in Zembauer Swimming Pavilion, so I get a chance to talk to them quite a bit. Describe what it's like to have the coaches that you do have, and some of the aspects that you really appreciate so far.
Yeah, it's been, in high school I had a really inconsistent coaching staff, which really made it difficult to do anything, because every coach has a different idea of where they want the crew to go, or how they want to train. And so like just having a consistent group of people that really care about everyone has been really amazing. Claudia's dog Susie, our assistant coach Claudia, she brings her dog to practice a lot, and that's been really amazing. Everybody loves Susie. She's coach dog. So that's been an aspect I didn't anticipate, but like now I couldn't imagine like not getting to pet Susie when I go to practice. And like Sam, our head coach, has been great, and I think I've really learned a lot about coxing. And they've also, because their main focus is the rowers, but they've also done a great job of making sure that the coxswains have resources, and that like when we're moving on to this kind of more virtual world, trying to still give us things that we can do because our role is not as prominent anymore.
I was about to say, I was looking through the Instagram, which for crew team is LC Pio's crew on Instagram, and I saw Coach Dog there, and I was going to tell you, I don't know if it's an official statistic, but I think rowing at Lewis and Clark leads the conference in dog coaches, and so that is pretty cool to see Susie out there on the launch.
Yeah, she's pretty great. She's got a cute little life jacket she wears in the launch, and she's tried to jump after a couple of ducks. And it gets pretty entertaining.
Now, you've chosen psychology as your major. Walk us through, how you came to that conclusion and some of the aspects of the psychology degree that you're looking forward to pursuing.
Yeah, I was undecided coming to Lewis and Clark. I really had no idea what I wanted to study, but my roommate, who was someone I knew from high school, we like chose to room together, and she was interested in studying psychology. So I was like, yeah, well, I'll take intro to psych with you. And she hated it. She changed majors, and I was like, I love this. This is what I'm gonna major in. Um, and yeah, all the professors, the psych professors I've had so far have been super engaging and wanting to know about me and what my path in psychology is going to be. And I still don't know like long-term career plans, but uh, yeah, learning how people think, learning why people behave the way they do is useful for a lot of things. So I think I'll be all right, and it's super interesting.
Well, looking forward to charting the journey and hearing how things go as you progress down to your degree at Lewis and Clark. I know you hopped right off, I think, a class to join us during the show. I really appreciate you doing that. Jaelen Hodges, thanks so much for making yourself available to us on lcpioneers.com live.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, fun conversation. And like I said, I mean, the question, which sometimes is the obvious question, right? I remember asking Madeline Landerfelt from tennis, women's tennis, this, and Sarah Starnes from women's track and field. You go to an event that maybe you don't see frequently. Maybe you didn't have anybody you knew who had ever rowed before, had ever attended a tennis match before. Where do you look when you go into the Lewis and Clark Tennis Dome and you see, 4 courts that are as spaced out as far as possible from you? Where should you look, and how do you understand which are the top singles matches? And in this case, with Jaelen kind of walking us through the basic understanding of all the things that the coxswains do for the team, and how they really are key to the speed of the boat. I mean, that is such a neat insight. I'm happy that Coach Lober had suggested I ask that question. I'm very happy that she did, because that was a really good insight into something that maybe you don't take the time to ask all the time. I think of it in this sense, like you go and you see something and you're like, man, I wonder how that works. But in the moment, you don't have a chance to either look it up yourself. This is an opportunity to kind of share that. And so, yeah, Jaelen did a really nice job giving us that insight. And you can tell just a sport that she really found something that she was good at, as she mentioned toward the end of her high school career at South Eugene High School. It was really neat to kind of hear that she had done that, and also had been a rower too in that aspect. I think that would imagine giving her some extra clout with her rowers as well. So that was a really cool interview, and I appreciate her taking the time to join us. Excited for the rest of the week too, because tomorrow we will have Coach Emily Hayes from volleyball, second appearance for Coach Hayes on the show. She was the last of our Lewis and Clark head coaches to be named Coach of the Year at the Excellence in Lewis and Clark's Year of Sports, the LC's awards, because those were last held in 2019. Because of the pandemic, we didn't have those this past spring. And then we'll bring in a class of 2018 women's tennis alumnus, Christine Eliasso, from that program that won a conference title back in 2016. Have a chance to hear what she is up to since she left Palatine Hill as well. So excited for the rest of the week of shows. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And again, coming up October 13th through 16th, we'll have Hall of Fame week on lcpioneers.com live. Hopefully interviews with each one of our individual inductees. You can read that right now at lcpioneers.com. And I did mention too, and we're planning this Saturday to have a women's soccer watchback, the first of hopefully many watchbacks with some of our teams in the absence of competition, a chance to look back at some of the best moments either from last year or years past with most of our programs. And it was neat because we had 4 of the student athletes, Coach Tercy, join us, and we've recorded that. We're working on editing it right now and planning to air it on Facebook Live as well as Pio Stream this upcoming Saturday. It'll probably be around noon, but we'll let you know for sure tomorrow. And then we're planning on having 2 of the student athletes from the team, both on last year's team, but back this year as well, do a live chat during it too. So you'll have a chance to interact with some of our student athletes coming up this weekend. So until we talk to you tomorrow with Coach Hayes of volleyball, I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks so much for having fun with us on this Wednesday. Big thanks again to Jaelen Hodges for joining us from women's rowing. And until we talk to you again tomorrow, as we do Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, you can bookmark lcpioneers.com/live. Thanks for having fun with us. We will talk to you again soon. You can catch all of our past interviews at youtube.com/lcpios. Goodbye, everybody.
My favorite spot on campus is like right outside the Dovecote, little benches, and there's like flowers growing there, and you can get a little coffee at the Dovecote and sit there.
My favorite spot on campus is definitely the weight room. I get that everybody loves like the gardens or the manor house, but our facilities for athletics here are actually amazing too, and the weight room is definitely my favorite spot.
My favorite spot on campus would either be the glade outside of the athletic facilities or South Campus.
What is my favorite spot on campus? I really like the back porch of the manor house. It looks out on Mount Hood, and on a clear day, it's super beautiful just to sit around with friends.
Hi, I'm Nick Lombardi. Something I've learned at Winterim this year is how to communicate a vision.
My biggest takeaway from Winterim is probably the networking. Getting to talk to everybody, connect with people for the future is one of the most valuable things, and I did Winterim last year, came back for more this year.
I think a way in which my liberal arts education has really helped me and my group formulate our ideas is that concept of critical thinking and having many different backgrounds. Me being an econ major and my two group mates being chemistry majors, we really get that well-rounded background, well-rounded ideas.
I think overall it's absolutely worth doing. You find yourself not only being more prepared for, say, well, this next semester, on top of being more prepared for life in general.